The other night I was sorting some buttons because it's really one of the things I enjoy in this life, sorting buttons. And I was just kind of doing a preliminary sort, getting them grouped by material in a general way so that I can further sort them and decide how to list them singly or in lots or whatever. And I spent a few hours sorting buttons and ended up with a big box full of small boxes of different buttons. And I thought I'd show them to you to act as a sort of preliminary primer on types of fancy buttons that people collect. And I'm filming here in this corner of the dining room because today it's snowing for the first time. Yay! Here are some of the buttons that I sorted the other night, and handy tip, these trays you get from mushrooms are great for sorting your buttons, and I eat a lot of mushrooms, so I have a lot of these, but I'm sure if you don't like mushrooms, there are other things that are good for sorting buttons as well. So I'll try to just talk about a couple of the materials here, or they're sort of divided by materials, more or less, and then do some more in the next video so that they're not too long. So let's start with some of the most common materials that you might find. So we're gonna put those aside, put that aside. So some common materials with vintage buttons, and when I say vintage, I kind of focus on Victorian through I don't know, I like Victorian through the 20s best, but I certainly buy and sell ones that are later on occasion, but Victorian are really gonna go best. And some of the most common types of Victorian buttons you're going to come across are metal of different kinds and glass. These are all black glass and silver lustered black glass in this little bin. And I'll show you what that's all about. So let's start with black glass. So your basic black glass button can be just a shiny sort of faceted deal. These were incredibly common in the Victorian era. And this one, for example, has a metal shank, but they don't have to. There's all kinds, all shapes, all sizes. Here's another basic faceted black glass button with a metal shank applied. And then they kind of get fancier from there. So there are ones that are sort of plain but have pie crust faceted edges. And this button is also a whistle button, which means it has one hole on this side and two holes on this side. That's not just a black glass thing. They were made in all kinds of materials, so that's something to look out for, something a little special, and can be lotted into a lot that collectors might look for. Like here's another whistle button, black glass. So you can make a lot of those. Then they get fancier from there. There are ones that are carved, and this one is carved with a leaf sort of motif, and then the back and the leaf is textured and made to look kind of matte, and the background is made to look pointy and shiny, like it's made out of little metal cut steel pieces, which is another style of button, which we will come across in the metal section. Let's see. Like, see these, the little flower buds? Those are cut steels. And so this is kind of imitating that. And then they can get even fancier. Like this one is made to look like fabric. It's very matte, and it's actually just that same old shiny black glass, but it's been texturized. And things that imitate other things are kind of popular in button land, so keep an eye out for that. Here's one that's fancy flowers and just sort of fancy holes. Here's one that's carved and painted. Or when I say carved, it's not literally carved. Most of the time it's pressed in a mold or something. Okay, then there's also black glass buttons that are called lusters, which they have this silver appearance. Very pretty. And they are meant to imitate metal, but they're black glass. They also have that cut steel thing going on. There's a whole bunch of them. So if you find buttons that appear to be glass, which you can tell because they're cold and they'll feel like glass against your teeth if that doesn't gross you out, and then they're actually just black on the back, and then they are silver and look like metal on the front, these are black glass lusters. Here's another one. No, that's not one, sorry. So they're a fun thing to find and to lot up, and if you find one that has particularly interesting pattern, it can even go on its own. Maybe not this one, but it's kind of like a weird tulip and a horseshoe thing. Here's a larger one. It's very pretty. So, you know, you could come across a quite large black glass button, be it luster or not, and those are going to sell really well. This one isn't that special, but it's large. This is probably, well, let's measure it. This is 1.25 inches, and it's black glass and has a nice carving in the middle. I might try to sell this one on its own or find one or two more to go with it. This one is quite spectacular. This one is black glass and it totally looks like fabric. It looks like passementerie, which is that kind of Victorian braiding, tasseling stuff they used to do. And it's just plain old black glass that's been well designed. That one's great. There's also sometimes black glass that are in more recognizable pictures or patterns, like here's a maple leaf, and that's the sort of thing people collect. Like people might be collecting maple leaves or Canada theme or whatever. Here's one that is black glass, but it's inlaid with actual metal cut steels. That's quite nice. It's small, but it's multi-material is also a thing people look for. So that's more or less the world of black glass. You might sometimes get these iridescent ones as well, which are nice. You might get ones that are painted that are not iridescent. Like here's one with these bold colors. Those are pretty cool. This one is actually, though it's hard to tell, this one is fabric with black glass in the center. Fabric over metal, probably. So yeah, that's more or less the world of black glass buttons. There's lots more of them out there that are different kinds, but this is just the ones I happened to put in this box while I was sorting. And you can sell these, usually these are gonna go in lots. The ones that are not that fancy, which would be like, this is like not that fancy, it's sort of fancy. I would put in a lot of probably 8, 10, 12, 20, something like that, depending on how they go together and how fancy they are. Ones that are really big and decorated, like this one, I might put in a lot with just 2 or 3. And especially if I can find other ones that are faux fabric like that. So that's how I market those sort of buttons. And for prices, you probably want to look at comps rather than trust me. My pricing is not exactly the same as, I don't price really the same way as other people, so you might want to look at comps and experiment with that. So let's do one more kind of button for this video. I guess I said metal is the other most common you'll find in the Victorian fancy button world. So there's so many kinds, but I'll just show you a few. So this is called a twinkle button, or it's also kind of a cricket cage. So the cricket cage aspect is the fact that it is got a three-dimensional shape that's sort of domed up in any way and pierced through so you can see inside. And then inside there's a shiny steel backing that makes it twinkle. So that's one kind of metal Victorian button. Another kind is just your average everyday picture button or pattern button. This one is sort of floral and geometric. This is probably made of brass, and it's got a shank, and lots of those are great. There's also ones that are mixed metals, like this one is brass with steel inside, and it's, again, flowers. This is a very typical Victorian button, but that's not to say you can't make a nice lot of a bunch of these and sell those. This one is pierced, which means that the cutout designs go all the way through. And this is, again, just a Victorian floreate sort of button with a shank. And we also have things that are more like pictures of actual subjects, and people collect those. This one's not that exciting, but it's a bird and some foliage. Here's a bird and some foliage with a velvet backing. That is somewhat more exciting. People like multi-material buttons, and that's very pretty. These buttons are not in great shape. They're pretty rusty, and you can clean them up somewhat with a wire brush, but I would be careful and go little by little, and don't go too far. Don't make them super shiny. Just try to clean up the rest if you can. This is another one of those twinkles. It has the steel backing inside that kind of shines. Here's a multi-material one with metal with mother of pearl inset inside. This one is damaged. It's missing one of the steels, but it is painted blue, which is kind of nice. Here's a really nice one that is a fan inlaid in mother of pearl in metal. Floral ones, all kinds. So you can make lots of those. I'll pull some of these out. And, or like floral ones, or ones that have a moon shape are pretty common. This is sort of a Horn of Plenty floral shape. It's like a snowflake shape. You could like do sets of any of these. Here's a rose. Here's some other flower thing. These little metal ones are quite common once you sort of find collections of actual old Victorian buttons, and you can make some nice lots of these, maybe 10, 12, 20, whatever. There's another one with flowers. It's quite interesting to look at. Sometimes you'll find really interesting patterns and pictures, and ones that are actual pictures are much more desirable. And this is kind of what I'm talking about with the picture button. This one is actually not that exciting. It's just a balustrade and some foliage. But you'll find ones that are mythological subjects, or plays and people and Asian women with chrysanthemums and all kinds of stuff. So keep an eye out for picture buttons. Or like this one is strawberries. That's the sort of thing somebody might collect. So maybe do a lot of strawberries. I saw another one in here someplace that was different. but I won't find it right now. This one has pearl, mother of pearl inside. This one I might try to polish up a little because it's very sad looking, but it's got this like dome shape and then mother of pearl edging. Here's another one, this one that has multiple materials. This is metal with a black glass inlay. This one is, these are cut steels. I probably have said that term before, maybe. And they're those little silver faceted stud things. Very popular Victorian design element. And they're meant to sort of give the impression of sparkle without using, you know, rhinestones or diamonds or whatever. They do a good job. And this is a one that's brass with cut steels, and these are pretty good to sell if you find, especially if you can make a lot, or and especially if you can find really big ones or really small ones that are interesting. Sometimes they're like quite fancy designs. Here's one that's an inlaid moon and star, which is a topic that people would collect who collect buttons. So that one's kind of cool. Anything else fun? There's so many kinds. This one's pierced. That one's boring. This is probably tin based on how dull it is, and you probably can't see, but it has some nice incised patterns in it. I don't know if I can clean this up or not. Here's some nice paisleys. Here's another cut steels, this one, that is just cut steels without a backing. These are also very common, but can be quite collectible. That's just a pretty design. So yeah, lots of Victorian metal buttons. And some are kind of like not that interesting. I don't know, that would have to go in a lot with a lot of other things to make it desirable. Or maybe I have a lot of those. Maybe I can sell a set of 8 or something. Not sure. There's 2. There's 3. They're very heavy, which makes me think they are really quite old. There's 4. Uh-oh, maybe I should keep them separate and put them in here. There's also these little ball-shaped Victorian buttons, which sometimes are shoe buttons or on the backs of dresses or whatever. Sometimes they are painted, metal, painted or dyed. This one is probably all brass, but has some blue, which is nice. There's some abalone or pearl inlay. So yeah, those are metal buttons. Sorry, I keep finding ones that are cool. This one has some red paint on it. These are little like shoe or dress buttons, little rounded ones, but they have a lot of texture to them. Here's an anchor. We haven't talked much about that sort of thing because this is not about uniform buttons. That's another video, a different topic. All right, so that's black glass and metal buttons for now, and then we'll do some different kinds next time because this is long enough. But I hope it was interesting and you're getting a feel for buttons, fancy old buttons. Very good. Thank you. Please like and subscribe and take care.